This module will explain what managerial economics is about and how it deals with decision making and the allocation of a firm's scarce resources amongst competing users. The interlinkage between economics and managerial decision making will be discussed. The major portion of the module will be elaborating upon the concept of a firm and the various goals of a firm. Economics, as defined by Lionel Robbins way back in 1932, is a science which studies human behavior in respect of the allocation of scarce resources and means towards alternative uses for satisfying unlimited human wants. It is a social science that studies how individuals, governments, firms and nations make choices on allocating scarce resources for satisfying unlimited wants. Thus, by its very nature, it requires decision making, and these decisions concern the optimal use of scarce resources for the satisfaction of unlimited needs and wants. On the other hand, management in business organizations is defined as the function that coordinates the efforts of people to accomplish goals and objectives using available resources efficiently and effectively. The two concepts clearly highlight the significant relationship between economics and managerial decision making, and put together they have led to the emergence of a field called managerial economics. Managerial economics is the application of economic concepts and economic analysis to the problem of formulating rational managerial decisions. In the words of McGuigan and Moyer, managerial economics is the application of economic theory and methodology to the decision-making problems faced by both public and private institutions. Managerial economics attempts to optimize business decisions given the firm's objectives and the constraints imposed by the scarcity of resources. To solve the business problem and to take decisions is the task of a managerial economist. Resources with the economy, the firm, are scarce. Therefore, the manager has to come out with optimal solutions with which the resources could be efficiently and effectively used to meet the objectives of the firm. Limited availability of resources acts as one of the constraints faced by managers of the firm. The other constraints are imposed by the general economic, political and legal framework of the economy. For example, the state of the economy, the legal framework, the production and taxation related laws, and the import-export policy, monetary and fiscal policies, how stable the government is, the competition from rivals in the market, conditions of market entry and exit, and so on. Thus, given all such complex constraints, the manager is supposed to undertake business decisions. Managerial decision making is a complex process and requires the manager to make choices amongst the alternative courses of action. And every choice that a manager makes involves an opportunity cost. The opportunity cost is the cost of an alternative course of action which has been foregone to pursue a certain given action. This is also about the second best action. Therefore, the cost that has been foregone in the second best option is known as the opportunity cost. Various decision areas covered under the gamut of managerial economics are selecting profitable business area, assessment and allocation of funds, which is an investment decision, the choice of product, price and market, which is a marketing decision, the choice of factors of production, which is a production decision or a technological decision, risk analysis, demand estimation and production decisions. There could be many other decisions, but these are some of the main decisions. Now let us look at the managerial decision making process. Decision making is crucial for the successful functioning of a firm. At each stage, managers have to make a decision concerning which product to produce, what price is to be charged, in what quantity it should be produced, and how it should be produced and distributed in the market, and also about how business would grow. Though there are no fixed processes and procedures of how a manager would go about these choices, various issues that have been discussed above could be treated as a part of the decision making process and could be generalized in the following steps. The establishment of the objectives. The first step in the decision making process is to establish the objectives of the firm. A firm may have several objectives. However, it is considered that one of the most important objectives of the firm is profit maximization. In fact, according to traditional economic theory, profit maximization is treated as the sole objective. The other objectives could include wealth maximization, sales maximization and so on. Then, after having established the objectives, then the managers have to define the problem. The second step requires the firm to define the problem clearly. This step involves a thorough analysis of the external and internal environment of the firm to clearly understand and define the nature of the problem. The managers therefore have to be fully aware of the environment. For example, a firm incurring continuous losses needs to examine various factors to understand why it is facing such losses. The analysis may require the firm to look at its business and its strategies, the competitors' strategies, the demand conditions and the labor conditions, the management relations, etc. Identifying the possible courses of action. After having analyzed the problem, the manager looks for the solution. Finding an optimal solution requires a manager to identify and consider all possible alternative solutions. Say for instance, in the above mentioned example, after understanding the problem, that is why a firm is incurring losses, the manager may consider to install some latest machinery to produce good quality products, and secondly, to change the business strategies to focus more on services offered along with the product. Naturally, the choice between alternatives will depend on which of the alternatives bring larger returns. Evaluating the alternative courses of action. After narrowing down on the possible courses of actions, managers evaluate these actions in terms of the costs and benefits. The courses of action that appear to be optimum shall be then chosen. Implementing the actions or decisions. The final step is the implementation of the decisions that have been undertaken. Implementation requires constant monitoring of the actions over the period of time so that the expected results can be obtained. In microeconomics, the concept in neoclassical economics about a firm or a corporation is that a firm exists because its objective is to maximize profits. All the decisions that are undertaken by a firm are directed towards one sole objective, that is maximization of profits. The business interacts with the market to determine various outcomes such as pricing and evaluation of the demand and the allocation of resources, and it is the net benefit in the form of profits which is its ultimate objective. The theory of the firm goes along with the theory of the consumer, which states that consumer seeks to maximize the overall utility or satisfaction. So, on the one hand, we have a producer who wishes to maximize profits, and on the other hand, we have a set of consumers who wish to maximize their utility or satisfaction. Hence, the economic agents ordinarily in the framework of microeconomics or neoclassical economics act and interact invariably through the market. Producers employ factors of production, sell their products, hire labor, raise funds, all of which is done by virtue of explicit or implicit contracts. If you go to a market and simply pay the price of some commodity, some good, and you get the good in return, you may not realize that the moment this transaction happens, there is automatically a contract between the buyer and the seller. Similarly, if you hire a worker even from the street to get some repair work done at home, there is an implicit contract. Therefore, the firm is something, or the producer is an individual, an entity who is constantly carrying out transactions through the market. One way of carrying out production, therefore, is to rely on the market for all such transactions. This method is adopted because the producer or the businesses feel that the market is the most efficient mechanism for handling such transactions. It is capable of evaluating the cost, which is the price paid, and the benefit, which is the return or the price received, the revenue received, in the best possible manner. In theory, markets are assumed to be so efficient that there is in fact no cost associated with the use of markets. The invisible hand of the market is supposed to be the best organizer. The market has been often described as the organizer of production par excellence. If this were the case, then there would be no need to employ factors of production like managers as employees. Managers are not hired on a daily basis. They are employees in some capacity, either permanently or contractually with the firm. So, if markets are the most efficient mechanisms, then logically speaking, there is no need for the firm to employ managers, and in fact there would be no need for a firm at all. This is because the firms in fact are a collection of contracts designed to carry out all kinds of economic activities within the fold of the firm. Therefore, firms exist as an alternative system to the market or the price mechanism when it is more efficient to produce in a non-market environment. That means that a firm is treated and believed to be more efficient than the market. So, this is in contradiction to something which the neoclassical economists believed. They believed that the markets are par excellence, they are organizers, market is an organizer par excellence. But even so, there is a school of thought which believes that managers actually could perform much more efficiently, or at least sufficiently more efficiently than the markets themselves. For example, in the labor market, it may be very difficult or costly for a firm to organize and to engage in production when they have to hire and fire workers depending on the conditions of demand and supply, because this is a solution that the market provides. If demand increases for products, then it implies that the firm, the producer, needs to employ more people, and the moment demand goes down, it implies that he has to lay off people. Now, this may be a very difficult thing to do. It may also be costly for the employees to shift from one company to the other every day in search of better alternatives. Similarly, it may be costly for companies to find new suppliers every day. Thus, firms engage in long-term contracts with their employees or long-term contracts with suppliers to minimize the cost or to maximize the value of the property rights. Ronald Coase was the first economist to expound his thinking about the firm in a lecture at Dundee in 1932, and believe me, he was just 21 years old then. He published a paper called The Nature of the Firm 5 years later. The central insight was that firms exist because going to the market all the time can impose a heavy transaction cost. You may need to hire a worker to negotiate prices, to enforce contracts, to name but three time-consuming activities. There could be many more such activities. A firm is essentially a device for creating long-term contracts when short-term contracts are too bothersome. But if markets are so inefficient, then get on getting bigger and bigger forever. So, the argument sometimes that is given is that if we believe that managers are more efficient than markets, then the significance of markets should go down and down, and the size of firms should go on increasing infinitely. But why doesn't this happen? Mr. Kose also pointed out that these little planned societies impose their own transaction costs, which leads to grow as the size of these firms grow. A proper balance is required between the hierarchies within a firm and the markets, and therefore it needs to be constantly calibrated by the forces of competition. Entrepreneurs may choose to lower transaction costs by forming a firm, but as the firms grow into giant firms, they themselves become unwieldy, sluggish and uncompetitive.